Hey everyone, Mr. MC here. This is a guide for round 4 of the Nations Cup Exhibition Series. Let's get this started. Bring yourself to the left and brake as you pass the 100 meter mark. You can briefly go down to first gear, then back to second for extra rotation. Just try to get the car pointing downhill as fast as you can so you can quickly get on the throttle. For Eau Rouge, it's possible to take it flat out. So you're going to take advantage of the curb on the left and turn in when the curb on the left ends. You can do a short lift right here if necessary. Just try to get as close as you can to the curbs on the right. Keep the right wheels on the curb so you don't get an off-track penalty. That little lift I mentioned can help the car rotate a little bit more so you don't end up going off track. Brake just before the curb on the left starts, slowly ease off of the brakes, do lots of throttle control as you go through the section. Bring yourself to the left, do a lift off of a throttle, go into 4th gear and start to accelerate. Brake just before the curb on the left starts once again, bring yourself all the way to the inside of the turn, carefully accelerate, bring yourself to the right, brake when you're halfway in between the curb on the right. This will be a quick burst of braking. You just want the car to quickly rotate around this turn. Brake just after you pass the 50 meter mark, brake hard for a super short moment, carefully ease off of the brakes, carefully ease on the throttle so you don't end up understeering off track. Now brake just before the curb on the left starts, slowly ease off of the brakes, just bring yourself to the insides of these turns, lots of throttle control, bring yourself to 4th gear, slowly accelerate, and brake just before the curb on the left starts. Just let the car make the turn, let it rotate, carefully accelerate, and then do a quick lift off of the throttle for this turn. For this left turn, turn in, do a very quick lift off of the throttle here. Now bring yourself to the left and brake as you pass the 150 meter mark. You can briefly go down to 1st gear for these hairpins so the car can quickly rotate around these turns. Go to 2nd gear, fully accelerate, and you are good to go. But that is all for the lap guide. Let's go ahead and talk about the strategies. For the qualifying session, you have 10 minutes to try to get a good qualifying time. Slipstream is going to be important here as that's going to help your car go even faster as you go through the straights after Eau Rouge and through the straight before you reach the final bust up chicane. Your racing soft tires don't last long here, so you only want to do one qualifying lap before you do the jump out and jump back in strategy. So after you complete your lap, you're going to see what I'm about to do here. So you press the options button on your PS4 controller or your wheel, exit, and if you're in the lobby, you press enter course. But if this is on race day, you'll press qualifying instead. So you spawn back at the pit box. You don't have to do an in lap. It saves you from doing that. So all you have to do is just do another out lap, and then you'll be able to do another qualifying lap. Because this track is pretty long, you're not going to have many chances to try to get a good qualifying time. So on one of your qualifying stints, you're going to need to do 2 qualifying laps. So this is the 2nd stint that I'm running, and I have to do a 2nd lap to try to see if I can improve on my time. In this case, I don't because the tire wear is already kicking in. So that's going to show how much of an issue it is. You want to try to get the best time possible through the use of slipstream and just try to perfect your corners. For the race itself, don't forget that this is a standing start, so you want to bring the traction control to 1, and shortly after you finally go off of the starting line or after you finish turn 1, you can then bring the traction control back to 0 or whatever value you normally have it at. Fuel is not an issue for this race at all, but the tire strategy is where things get really funky. Your starting position is going to determine what kind of strategy you want to run, and the further back you are, if you end up in a lot of battles or you end up getting penalties or do big driving errors, then you're going to need to adjust your pit strategy so you can try to reduce the amount of time lost in the pit stops. So if you're starting in first, second, or third place, and you're able to keep those positions when you complete the first couple of turns, then you're going to want to go with a 3-stop. So this is where you do 2 4-lap stints on the racing soft tires, 1 3-lap stint on the racing medium tires, and only 1 1-lap stint on the racing hard tires. So with this 3-stop, it is 1 second faster than the 2-stop in terms of total time. But the thing here is that you need to have a really good drive. So of course you need to have a really good pace overall, get consistent times, and you need to make sure that you don't make too many driving errors and don't get any penalties. So if you're able to avoid all that and just get good times, good consistent times, then you're going to see yourself running the 3-stop. If you're starting basically from 4th to 20th place, then you're most likely going to run the 2-stop. This is actually the strategy that I'm running in this race, and this is when I also realized that 3rd place was on the racing medium tires, so I had to try to find a way to get around him. And that's going to also be a bit of an issue as well, because if you get held up big time, then that can potentially change the pit strategy that you're going to want to run with. This is going to be the case with the 1-stop, and if you're starting in the middle of the pack. So let's say you're starting 10th place and you get held up big time, then that's when you're going to want to start to think whether you want to stick with the 2-stop or potentially go with the 1-stop. The 1-stop is the absolute worst case scenario. This is if you end up getting lots of penalties, or just end up spinning out, or you get held up so much that you're losing a lot of time. The thing is that with Spa, the pit stop is pretty long, so it's easy to gain or lose positions depending on how many pit stops you do. But if you're not losing that much time, you're getting pretty consistent times, then you can stick with the 2-stop. I mean, you want to stick with the 2-stop until you find out that you're losing a lot of time. So I'll quickly summarize this part just in case something didn't make sense. So if you're starting in the top 3, you can either go with a 2 or a 3-stop. 3-stop is a better choice as long as you have a really good drive and don't get any penalties or big driving errors. If you're starting 4th and below, then you can start to think about going with the 2-stop. If you're starting in the middle of the pack, still go with the 2-stop, but if things go south from there, then that is when you can start to think about whether the 1-stop might be a viable option. Once again, this is the worst case scenario, so if things go really south, then that's when you know it's time to run the 1-stop. In terms of tire wear is a pretty big issue here. The racing soft tires last 4 laps, so you don't want to go any more than 4 laps unless if you're an absolute pro at saving tires. And for the racing medium tires, they last 6 laps, so this will be normally the point where those on the racing medium tires will be pitting at the end of the 6th lap. So when you're 3 laps in on the racing soft tires and about 4 laps in on the racing medium tires, that is when the tire wear really starts to kick in. And in the case of the Dodge Viper, the car is going to become a lot more understeery when the tire wear starts to kick in. So you're going to want to be a lot more careful through some of these turns, as it's going to be easier for the car to want to go off track. And if you hit the AstroTurf like the one on the right, it's going to be easy for the car to get sucked in, and you can either potentially lose control and then get really dirty tires, which will make the car even worse to handle. So you want to be careful when the tire wear starts to kick in. Just try to be a bit easier on the car, lift off of the throttle a bit more, just let the car make the rotation before you get back on full throttle. But yeah, that is pretty much it for this strategy guide. Hopefully this helps you out a bit, as the strategy for this one is not so clear cut, so hopefully this helps you out a bit. But anyways, I am going to go ahead and sign off now. So this is Mr. MCA, wishing you a good race, and I'll see you in the next video.